Hey guys, this is Elio Fox. I'm about to start recording Wonder Dog's hand history review. Currently sweating moldy playing the 3500s. Here's the Wonder Dog footage. I've not looked at it yet, so bear with me. I'm going to pause and play a lot. I think this is a Sunday recording, but I'm not positive. It actually looks like it isn't, but yeah. Let's just get going with the footage. Here at the bottom left, we have King 4 suited versus a one before the hijack, min raise, and a cutoff call. Actually, I guess it's hijack -1. I think you can complete here, throwing in 300. You're getting over 6-to-1 pot odds, and though you obviously have reverse implied odds when you make top pair, you are also suited, and I think you can continue off enough to play the hand getting over 6-to-1. Here it looks like we opened the cutoff with Jack 9 off and got called by the big blind. There's currently 2750 in the middle. I think the blinds are 250, 500 at this point. Our hand is not quite strong enough to get it in comfortably on the flop, though there are some scenarios where we might have to do that. I like betting and seeing what happens. You're obviously going to get called by a bunch of worst hands, bunch of worst 9x, and some pair plus gutter type hands, pair plus. Yeah, so I would just bet, I guess, close to half pot. I'd probably bet around 1200. If we were a lot shallower, I'd bet a third or a quarter of pot. But I think that you need to bet a little bit bigger on the sweated texture when we have this much left behind. So he bets 1375, slightly bigger than I would have made it, but still pretty perfect. It would be an awkward spot if we got check raised, but what we do would depend upon sizing and reads. I think if he bombed it, we'd probably just fold, but if he made it small, we'd call. Here we do defend. Good defensor. And we have what's not a great flop for our hand. I would, versus 2000, we can comfortably fold here four-way. He bet over 2/3 pot, and we don't even have a backdoor flush draw. And there's still going to be a player left to act behind, even if the small blind folds. So I think it's a pretty easy fold. If you bet smaller and we had diamonds instead of hearts, it's a spot I would definitely call. But I think as the action occurred, we can comfortably fold. Top middle, we have 10-6 diamonds, 10.5 big blinds. I think it's an easy fold. Top right, 27 knockout turbo. We have a fold with queen 4 off. It's not strong enough to shove. Probably need close to like queen 8 there. Well, I guess small blind only has 4K. But it means that he's calling off a lot, so still nowhere near strong enough. Bottom left, if it was folded to us, I would open for sure. I think about slightly less than 2.5, like maybe 710, 720 is very reasonable. Middle, we have kings with 10.5 big blinds. I think it's important to just open shove. You don't want to make it obvious that you have a good hand. And it's important to protect your open shoving range by including your nut hands in it. I mean, obviously that's less important when you're playing with people you don't play with a lot in these lower stakes tournaments with a lot of fish in it, but I'd still just go all in with my entire range there. I would incorporate a min-raise folding range when I have like maybe 12 or 13 big blinds. But even then, probably wouldn't do that very often. In some cases, not at all. I think for the most part, the stuff that you guys need to be working on a lot is just defending more from the big blind and getting better post-flop. I think that a great way to improve post-flop is by watching a lot of the high-stakes cash videos on Run It Once. Sauce videos in particular are very good. even the Phil Galfond, though he's not that comfortable with no limit these days, I think are pretty good. Just given that his thought process is so logical that he teaches you a way to think about poker. I mean, I find that I've probably learned more from watching his PLO videos about No Limit Hold'em than I have watching like tournament No Limit Hold'em videos. Because it's really more important to have a very solid thought process than it is to sort of memorize situations. Top right, King 8 offsuit, we would have, I think it probably would have been a fold if we were folded. I mean, there's two players that only have 5 big blinds, but I think it's close. Just versus soft opponents, it could easily be a shove just because they're not calling nearly wide enough. Bottom left, standard open with King Queen. If we were 3-bet here, I think we just 4-bet pile every time, unless we had some insane read that, you know, he's a huge net or something. Wasn't 3-bet folding at all. I think another thing that is important these days in the game is just not raise folding shallow very often. It simply does not work anymore. People's short stack play has gotten very, or a lot better, I should say. Bottom right, we have Queen Jack spades. We open with a min raise, get called by the hijack, and button squeezes. This is a spot where if the button was a really aggressive 3-better that would have a wide bluffing range here, we could just 4-bet call versus him or rip. There's so much in the middle, 6,500 in the middle, and he only has 11-8 behind. And the caller is simply just almost never getting it in versus us. I mean, sometimes he'll have some sort of slow play, or maybe a hand like tens that he decides, raise queen that he decides to call off with. But I think the vast majority of the time he'll fold. So if we know that the button is going to 3-bet fold, like, you know, close to half the time, we can get it in simply because we're winning 6,500 when they both fold, and when we get it in versus button, we probably have 35% equity, you know. So if he's folding half the time, it'll be really profitable. But obviously a lot of people always are getting it in when they squeeze in this spot, and versus those people, getting it in is terrible. King Jack, bottom left, I would min raise, call off versus the big blind, and fold versus all in by the button, and probably fold versus the 3-bet by the small blind. You know, I could be convinced versus a small blind with a wide bluffing range that it was a shove, but I don't think the button is going to 3-bet fold at all with that stack, or very infrequently. So yeah, what I was saying about just raise folding in short stacks is even the awful players now know that they can go all in shallow over min raises pretty wide, and I think it's important to realize that when you're getting reshoved on really wide, you know, raise folding obviously sucks a lot, and especially given that the average table is going to have people that you just don't know that are reshoving wide, and you're not going to be able to adjust correctly to call them really wide because you don't even know they're doing it. It's kind of good to just start off by playing a nitty short stack strategy at most tables with regards to raise folding, and then just, you know, if you notice your table is particularly weak tight, opening up a lot. Top right, I would just shove under 10 big blinds, tens, pretty easy. 9-8 spades, I would just fold. Don't think there's much to say. Yeah. Bottom right, it's worth mentioning that if we were shallower and wanted to create a raise folding strategy, min-raise folding strategies, that ace-x off or ace-x suited hands are pretty good to min-raise fold, simply because when you're like 17 big blinds deep, you just aren't getting flatted very often, so it's probably better to just have an ace or a king blocker when you're going to min-raise fold. But obviously we are, you know, over 30 big blinds deep, so that logic does not apply. And we are looking more for hands with post-flop playability rather than blockers to open. Top left, just try to min-raise, get it in. I mean min-raise fold as a bluff versus the shorty. I don't really like it because you're not really repping very much. You know, the ace hands that you didn't get in pre, you'd probably just check call on that board and let him bluff off. And you just don't have any backdoor equity, really. I mean, I guess a 7 or a jack. But I think I would just do that with hands that had like a backdoor flush draw or something rather than just doing it with 9 high, very little backdoor equity. You know, if you're thinking of bluffing in a spot that's a little iffy, you might as well just use your higher equity bluff combos than your lower equity ones. So that's usually how I decide things, not just, you know, check raises, but like everything. If I decide I want to 3-bet in a spot because I think it's a good spot, I don't just 3-bet it every time. I wait till I have, you know, a blocker or some post-flop playability if I think I'll get flatted a lot. You really don't want to just, you know, choose a random hand to bluff with at a random time. And I'm not saying you know, Wonderdog did not have a read there or do it for a specific reason. I just mean in general that it's important to like balance your frequencies by doing things the time where you actually have a little bit of an equity edge over other times where you have, you know, absolutely nothing. And that's, you know, particularly true with 3-betting pre-flop or 4-betting pre-flop or, you know, any spot that comes up a lot. Top left, Busto soon limps the cutoff with, you know, 16 bigs. He's a very good player. He's good with short stacks. I'm trying to think what this means. I think it's probably a hand that he doesn't want to min-raise fold, but maybe thinks that open shoving is like, you know, just not as good as open limping. He also could have some slow plays for sure, but I think his slow playing will be like kings plus. It won't ever include like ace king or ace queen or something. So I think if we had, you know, 5 or 6K, I would just open jam. I'm trying to think whether I think like, you know, 3xing and calling off is better or limping behind is better. And I think I just like raise calling. If we were suited, I would like limping behind because our hand does better multi-way. And I really think that he just has, you know, a weak hand that he doesn't want to get in more often than he has the nuts. I mean, he definitely has a weak hand more often than he has the nuts, but yeah. Middle, ace-2 off, the cutoff with 18 big blinds. I think open shoving is the right play for sure. It just doesn't have post-flop playability. You have a blocker, and you can't raise call. So I think in a vacuum, open shoving's best. Top left, we make it, you know, 3.5x. The problem with making it that big is it makes it look like you just never are nutted, and the reason for that is it makes it particularly obvious that you're raise committing to Busto soon. I think with a more nutted hand, you'd make it slightly smaller. And if the blinds are competent at all, they're going to realize that you know, don't have queens plus ever, and maybe exploit that by reshoving a little wider. So yeah, that's just something to think about. And we get called by the big blind, and Busto soon folds. I think it's pretty clear that the big blind is a huge fish. I don't think anybody competent really has a peeling range in a spot like this when your sizing is so big. So I would proceed making that assumption. He leads big, and I would just fold with no diamond. It's really weird. Obviously, not a single hand makes sense for value. You're going to be c-betting that board with all your air. Why the fuck would he? Maybe not all of it, but a lot of it lead. You know, it just doesn't really make sense. But you have no diamond, and he made it big. It's really tough to do anything about it. I mean, if we rip, like, he needs to be folding over half the time for it to be profitable, and we just can't know that he's doing that at all. Top right, stat call. So I guess when there's these long pauses in the videos, I should maybe go into some just basic strategy stuff that's really general and theoretical and not very specific. Something that I think I've been doing a bit more versus regs that has been working well is just barreling dry runouts. People don't really expect you to just, fire through barrels on like 10, 5, 2, 6, 2. And I think that you can get people to fold some way stronger hands that you might think, especially if they're people that can hand read and you have a somewhat tight pre-flop image. So those of you that are playing fairly tight pre-flop, and I think that's a lot of you actually, it's pretty important to exploit the way other regs view you. If there's somebody you're playing with a lot that you have a lot of respect for, and you think they think you're tight pre-flop, it's important to just sort of barrel off on these boards where your value range is over pairs and sets. Because I think people just give you credit, and I think that especially in like high stakes live tournaments, that some of the biggest winners are people that are playing fairly tight pre-flop ranges but are extremely tough to pay post-flop. They're bluffing a ton and they're value betting very thin, and while their ranges aren't that loose pre-flop, they win a lot of the pots that they play because of how aggressive they are after the flop. I think it's very good defend with ace-9 off. It's a min raise. You're getting a very, very good price. 4-1, or slightly more. I think that you just want to check call this board, and you check call too, and then see what happens on the river, and fold a bunch, and call sometimes. It's important to sometimes call with your bluff catchers and sometimes fold with them, because if you do one or the other all of the time, you're obviously very exploitable. Top right, I don't know if we're on the bubble or something, but, this is probably a get-in. We have over 33% equity versus his min-raising range. And we can just get it in, get over 2-1. So, it'll definitely be profitable to get it in with Jack-7 there. Now that there's reshove, I would just fold. Though, obviously, we get it in, the original opener folds, we're getting a ridiculous overlay, which is nice. So it looks like bottom left got bet on the flop and check back on the turn. And now, deciding whether to bet or check here is kind of a weird spot. I think it's actually a pretty clear check, and the reason is that it is almost impossible for us to get to this river with air. For us to have air here, we would have to have something like King Jack, or we could have like 4-5 or 5-6, but even then we have a pair. We'd have to have some sort of king high float that miss that we'd now bluff with. For that reason, given that those are the only really air hands we have, I think that you can't really value bet very wide by leading on this river versus anybody who can hand read at all. So for that reason, just ace-x hands that are not two pair or better, you just kind of have to check and hope that they try to bluff you off of something like 6-7 of diamonds, or 5-6 of whatever. You are going to have some 7x combos in your defending range here. I personally would defend any 7-5, 7-6, 7-8 suited hand versus a min raise from the big blind here, even with these shallow stacks. They do pretty well versus a tight opening range, getting over to 4-1. So, they should be within your range. And presumably, you could float the flop with something like 5-6 diamonds, but I don't think you bluff that on the river necessarily. So, and even if you were, he doesn't even know that you are, and you may not even have them in your range, just because floating with a, backdoor straight draw, backdoor gutter is, backdoor flush draw is not that standard, and probably not even very good in this spot at all. So I like the check a lot. Sucks he didn't take a stab, but, is what it is. All right, we're on break. Oh, I guess that was part one. I will bring up another part. Okay, so here, fire off part two. Top right. One of my biggest leaks used to be that I was not getting it in with 2 or 3 big blinds wide enough. And I know that sounds absurd, but I mean, just to give you an idea of how wide you can get it in these spots. So this is what this is how I have my my Nash ranges set up, and this is what I use while I'm playing. It's a little confusing, but it's what I do, and it works for me. It's all chippy V, but you know, basically here is 18 big blinds with antes, and here is 5 big blinds without antes, and all these tabs are everything in between those things. Actually might not have really short stack ranges up. Okay, so 3 big blinds with antes. You know, under the gun you should be shoving 54%, but when under the gun shoves, you can get it in with 57% from under the gun plus 1. So just the point I'm making is that when you're overcalling in these spots, you can actually get it in really wide because your pot odds, and that's pretty important. Yeah, but these are the way I use the tabs, and I would suggest that you all do this. Just bookmark a ton of Nash tabs with shove folding ranges so that you can pull it up when you're deep in, like, you know, turbos where first is a lot of money, just to make sure you're playing perfectly. There's just no excuse for making short stack mistakes these days. There's too many tools at your guys' disposals, and you know, for most of you, this is what you do for a living, so you kind of got to take it seriously and try to make as much money as possible. Top middles, obviously a shove. Versus a lot of opponents, I would shove 100% of hands here. Versus somebody that is really competent, you know, Nash probably says you can shove like about 80 or something, but you know, I think most people just are never calling with hands like 9-10 suited or 8-9 suited, which they have to make you shoving 100% bad. So for that reason, you just need to shove here. Decided to make a small raise. I think going all in is way better. I mean, you just have such a strong hand for this spot. You know, it's a top 55% hand, so I guess it's not so strong. But, you know, it's just more than strong enough. And if he's going to correctly defend versus your open, then shoving is going to be way better. Because, you know, if he has a hand like 6-5 off and you open there to that size, he should be calling versus your hand specifically. So, you know, it just means that you're giving him a little bit of free equity versus the weaker portions of his range, which is never what you want to do. Queen 3 suited, I'd min raise, and then I guess be close first Casmus. He peels again, so while we may have given him free equity last time, he's clearly awful and just has no idea what's going on. Because peeling from the small blind with that stack size is just bad with anything, pretty much. Given that, yeah, well, whatever. You guys know that. Here I just bet call it off, and I think bet calling it off is better than shoving, just because it looks stronger if you bet like 1500 and call a shove. And yeah, I think you're just going all ins might be more likely to get you heroed off by like bottom pair or something, but I could be wrong. Probably just doesn't matter very much. During WCoop, I'm going to make an effort to record myself while I'm playing so I can go over some of my own play with you guys. Wonderdog was kind enough to send me, I think, 4 parts to this. So I think what I'll try to do is I'll just record, you know, maybe 20 more minutes of this and then make a second video. Middle, I think that open shoving is probably profitable, but I think that min raise and calling off versus cast miss and folding versus the other three is also acceptable. I don't really like open folding. I mean, it was the worst ace to have in that spot, but I think it's still just maybe not unexploitable to open shove, but probably making money. I mean, I don't know where the bubble is, so I can't say for certain, but here, with the ace queen suited, I just mid raise. Just get it in versus everyone. Here on the bottom right, I would open fold simply because small blind stack. It would suck to have to call off versus him. If I was fold 2 is what I mean. But if we were like, 20, 25 big blinds deep, what I just do sort of in those button spots versus 2 reshove stacks is I kind of just open like, 80 to 100% of hands, and then if I see that they're really wide reshovers, I start folding some buttons. That kind of goes against what I said about having tight raised folding ranges in general for short stacks, but I think that in late position, and most specifically in the button, that you really can get away with a lot just because of all the antes in play. And seeing how much people let you get away with is really a good thing. Bottom left, we get peeled. Party's 10-handed, so, ranges everywhere are tighter. I mean, I have absolutely no idea what this specific villain is capable of or how wide he is pre-flop, and I don't even know which of these is his stats. I think actually he maybe just got moved to the table or something. I think that check folding is not horrible, but betting is good because basically the big blind being so short and you having to call off versus him if he shoves means that the original flatter is just not going to bluff a lot. I.e., he's not going to float you very often, and he's not going to play back when he doesn't have it, just because he's sort of handicapped by this short stack player behind him. So having the initiative in this spot is actually probably more important than having position. And I think you can leverage that by betting small. So I would just bet, something like 1,500 and call off versus the big blind and fold if Froshmo or whatever does anything. Bottom right, it looks like we raised called a6 versus a really short stack, and it just seems standard. It was a good open, and we were committed to call when he went all in. Once that guy leads, I would just fold. He's going to have a draw a lot, but there's a player left to act behind, and, the flatter shouldn't have the craziest range given positions. I really like the way that Wonderdog recorded this footage. 6 tables would be ideal, but this is very crispy and beautiful looking and is ideal to record over. And hopefully there's some more interesting spots here that come up. Unfortunately, the nature of tournament poker is that most spots are fairly simple and generic. That's why it's so important to have good short stack fundamentals, because that is just most of tournament poker. Top left with the limper limping. Well, another short stack limper limps. Let's see what Busto Soon does. If Busto Soon folds, I think I would just raise call off by verse both short stacks, simply because there's so much money in the middle. So I think I'd make it like 1250, 1300, just because we're out of position. And while our hand's pretty good, it doesn't do that well multi-way out of position. This is obviously a great flop for us, though. Middle, I think you just have to fold versus the 3x and the call. They're both probably huge fish, but, 3x'd, we're out of position, etc. We only have 20 bigs also. Top left, after flop checks through, I think you just bet turn small. Not too small. I think over half pot, given that we're 4-way. I like that sizing. And, I'll appeal with some more hands for sure. River was awful just because if he had any pair plus gutter, he got there. And he definitely can because he's a fish that open limped. So, it just wouldn't be that surprised if he had like 6-7 or 4-6 or, any of the 7-5. A lot of 2-pairs he could have. Though I think he'd shove 7-5 on the turn. So, I don't know. Bottom left, I think that just reshoving here is good. It's 24 bigs, which is a lot, but, bunch is only 21 bigs deep, so, yeah, I think folding's a mistake with all the antes in there, 10-handed, and just, yeah, you have good hand, and your button should be opening really, really wide. I definitely just jam there. I didn't see what happened. Top left. Did we check fold or what? Yeah, bottom left, he's running 23-20, which is pretty aggressive. I really don't understand the fold. Queen 10 suited has blockers, and it just does okay all in. Like, got some flush draws and some straight draws, pair draws. His hand's fucking sweet. And he's just going to fold, 65% of the time. Just a ton. Yes, it went check, check, and we won. And that's a spot where, like, as soon as I saw that type of thing from Fasha, I would just make a note on what he did. I just love notes. It's great to be able to look them up later and just instantly know people are fish. I do a color coordinating system where I give, like, purple to really good reg, red to really aggressive fish. I think I have another color for, passive fish, maybe like a light blue. Yeah, and just, you create different colors that represent different things, and then when you just color coordinate and then you write notes, it gives it a really easy way to tell how people are playing, and then You can always change your note later if they change the way they play or whatever. It looks like red is Wonder Dog's reg note because I know Busto Soon and You Are Dead, and I chance W, so I'm assuming the other two red guys are regs that I just don't know, so I haven't been playing that often. Bottom left, Queen 10 suited. I just like open shoving. You maximize your fold equity. You're going to have to get it in versus everybody but the big blind anyway, and yeah, I think just open jamming is better. Yeah, not much to say. After min raising, you definitely have to call here. You're not getting 2 to 1. You're getting slightly less, but you know he's gonna have a wide reshoving range, and you're gonna do well enough versus it to call. But now that they both went all in, you get to fold, and you made me look real stupid because the only thing that could have possibly happened to make you get away from your hand happened, and I of course would have gotten it in, but I would have won. King Queen versus the 3x. It's kind of a weird spot. Versus min raise, I mean, you just go all in or call are both fine because you do have a little bit of fold equity versus min raise. Versus a 3x, it's weird because you don't really have fold equity, and his, oh wow, he's only raising 9% of hands. So I'd actually just fold here. I think it's pretty clear. He's running 35-9, which is super passive preflop stats, which probably means that he's just super nutted. Wonder Dog goes all in, and I'm expecting him to just call. Yeah, gets called by aces. Yeah, just, people who run at 35-9 when they 3x under the gun, it's usually like 3% of hands or something. I think you're just always called there, and you're always boned, except when you're flipping with like 9s through jacks. Bottom left, just min raise, fold with your blocker. That's what they're there for. Open jamming is also profitable. Oh, wow. Did not see the min raise from Joker's fold. Nice fold. My bad, guys. Ace-6 off versus top right. I think we can defend. We're getting over 4 to 1. It's not a great hand, but, you're going to have 30% equity versus his range, and while it's going to be pretty hard to play at that position, you can check jam a bunch when you have 6s and just like check call a couple when you hit an ace. On this board, I'd just fold. Alright, I'm going to wrap it up for now, partially because I'm not sure if it was even recording the entire time, and partially because I just prefer to do short, concise videos, keep myself fresh. But I'm going to try to record one again for you guys soon, and hopefully we'll have some of my footage after the recoup. Good luck on the grind, guys. Hope all is well. Later. It's still recording because I don't know how to unrecord. Bear with me. Man, this is so brutal. Stop recording.